they would be all but perfect if it were not for an envious half-brother, a cheating wife, a thieving son, dark secrets. So, you know,
it's not religious in the sense that it's set in this particular. I needed two families, so you know I chose a polygamous setting in Alaska.
Ah, and have you been to Alaska?
Only in my mind.
Well, that's what. How do you set a novel in a place you've never been? How do you do that?
You know, I recall when I was a kid, I'd never been to Niagara Falls, but the Nabisco shredded wheat box used to have had a picture of Niagara Falls, and I can recall as a kid sitting at my table with my chin on the table, eating my Nabisco, staring at the falls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here about 15 years ago or so, we went to the falls.
And it was just how you imagined.
I'd been there. Yeah, you know, when I was a kid, I quit school and ran away from home. So I roamed around the country for 6 months, you know, and a lot of these things I'd already been there. You know, somewhere in my psyche it was sort of jammed in there, tightened up, and it just kind of flows out, you know, some things that I remember about, you know, some area or something, and then you make a story. You make the story around that, you know. Mm-hmm. It isn't the story. The story are the people.
That's true.
I need a setting.
Why Alaska? Why not, you know, Ohio or northern Michigan, Traverse City? You know,
because you know, I think in any time that people, what piques interest is something unusual, unusual characters, unusual settings. Something that there's a mystery, there's a kind of a mystique about different parts of the world that people haven't been to. Now, the people living in Alaska may find Owasso mysterious,
exotic, right?
You know, but exotic. But it's not something that you know that people here have been to very often. I have some, you know, I had some of my clients that come in my shop that I quizzed a little bit about distances between Anchorage and Fairbanks. You know, just so I had that right. You know, just
so you do want to make sure it's geographically accurate.
Yeah, that part. You know, so it doesn't. You know, I have writers that are readers that are kind of anal, and you know, if you don't have all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed just right, they get a little bit concerned about the rest of the story. So
that's true.
Yeah,
got it.
So you got to have things in line. You know, so to please that particular type of an individual when they're reading it, so they don't get thrown off from the story.
Now this Jacob Mueller, who is the protagonist in the new book, what's he like? Tell me about him.
Well, he's a patriarch of his family. Mm-hmm. He's a man that tries to do good. He has 2 wives, and they're sisters, and you know in spite of his efforts to bring his sons, you know, into kind of a Judeo-Christian type of a life, you know, that he discovers he has the same problems, you know, that the rest of the world has within their community, you know, and this was the point of this kind of this overview here was, you know, to not have a religious story, because it's not. Mm-hmm. It's a story that takes place in a religious community to illustrate that people are still people, you know, in spite of what the setting is. You know, Christians have tried that. They tried that in Geneva several centuries ago with a theocracy under Calvin. Didn't work. You know, the Islamics try it with the Sharia law. You know, they find that it doesn't work. There's always, you know, a faction that breaks off that wants to, you know, throw a wrench into this.
The whole idea of 2 wives interests me. Obviously, you don't have any personal experience with that. But was this a fantasy of yours, or how did you handle this 2 wives?
Well, you know, I found that the context in which I've written these stories, the context, you know, the prodigal father. I used the prodigal son story in Luke. There is no wells in Alaska, you know, to speak of. that he could be thrown down into. You know, the story of Joseph, he was thrown down into the well by his brothers. You know, they were jealous and envious of him. So there, I used a mine shaft. And, you know, instead of being sold into slavery, that separated him from his family. After he managed to get out of the mine shaft, he had retrograde amnesia as a result of the blow to the head. So it, you know, became that's what separated him from his brothers and his family. And then, you know, the adventure starts. You know, and I use the two for a certain segment of the story. I'm at the you know, with the Mormons and how they're dealing with this, and how he's dealing with this. You know, as each one of them, and then how they converge back together again. How they come back together as a family.
Is this your legacy? Is this the permanent thing you leave behind in the world after you're gone? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, in that sense, because each one of these stories, you know, has again, it's my view of the world. You know, how I see it. I'm sure I share that, you know, with others too, because I'm part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.